we go. Welcome back to comic book history. Yep. Yeah. Now, those of you curious though, who am I going to basically talk about today? Well, it's not a particular character per se. Nope, it's not a character. It's a person. For episode 90 of this series, I'm going to be talking about, for the first time since episode 486, I'm talking about comic creator. Which one? One who just passed away just about 2 weeks ago, Peter Allen David. A man who was basically 2 months older than my own dad. Yep, that is 100% completely true. He's about the same age as my dad. My dad never met Peter David. I did. He was born on December 23rd, 1956. Roughly almost exactly 2 months before my dad was born. Oh yeah, definitely. And I even told him when I got a chance to meet him second time that my dad really loved one of his books, which I'll get to that. So, Peter David himself didn't start writing comic books until 1983. And the two people you can thank, basically, who are still very much alive, if you ask about this might be true. Because apparently he tried to submit many comics, apparently. Just read about this. Not successful until he ran into a man by the name of Jim Owsley, a.k.a. Christopher Priest, a man who's still writing comics this very day. Him and Larry Hama got Peter David actually in the door to write actual comics, more comics. After a couple stories from Marvel Age, eventually he did do his very first comic Marvel, an issue of Peter Parker The Spectacular Spider-Man issue 183. In the book was released on March 19th, 1985. So you can kind of say that Peter David has been writing comic books on a similar basis prior to his passing for almost 40 years. And it was pretty consistent, except the last few years, which, because of his health, he had to reduce from ongoing series to limited. And after he did that one issue of Peter Parker Spider-Man, he did do 2 issues of Amazing Spider-Man 266 and 267. Yep. He also went back between Peter Parker, Amazing, even Web of Spider-Man. He even did some annuals. Yes. So, for Amazing Spider-Man, he wrote these issues. 266, 267, 268, 289, and 525. 525 was actually part, I believe, of the other crossover, I believe it was. Yes. Peter Parker Spider-Man, the book you gotta start with. He did 103, 105 to 110, which is the Jean the Wolf storyline, which happened at that period of time. 112, 113, 115 to 119, 120, 123, 128 to 129. He did also 2 annuals for Peter Parker Spider-Man 506, and the last thing he wrote for that book was issues 134 and the 146. Web of Spider-Man, he did issues 7, 12, 13, 40 to 44, 49, and the 6th annual. He did Spider-Man Special Edition. That was 92. And that was kind of in the 80s. Aside from writing Spider-Man comics, basically about, I'm looking at this, so exactly 2 years after he started writing Amazing Spider-Man, writing a very consistent time writing the book, he basically got started with quite possibly one of his most popular books ever in his whole career. His run on the awesome Incredible Hulk title. Yes, a run that lasted for 12 years. Yes, 12 years of writing this title. First that she wrote was 328, but he basically started consistently with issue 331. He missed one issue, 360, and was on the book through issue 467. Just around 1990, we finally wrapped the run. He would also do, a few one-shots from this run. First mini-series featuring Perfect, which later led to 3 mini-series. There's also a one-shot Hulk vs. Venom. Tales of Astonish Volume number 1, which featured Hulk, Human Torch, and the Thing. Prime vs. Incredible Hulk, Savage Hulk number 1. Incredible Hulk / Hercules Unleashed, Hulk / Pit, Hulk The End. These are Hulk books you wrote. You wrote What If General Ross Became the Hulk, Hulk Destruction miniseries, Giant Size Hulk, War Hulk Prologue, World Breaker, Marvengers Hulk 13-16, Hulk vs. Fang Fang Boom number 1, Incredible Hulk Big Picture, Hulk Broken Worlds, I think it was short story in this one. Featuring Perfect War Zones, which is 5 issues, Secret Wars Battle World number 4, Hulk Last Call. This came out during the popular Immortal Hulk book. And he did 3 Mesro books. Mestro, he did the original Mestro miniseries, which came out in 2020, War and Pax, and War M, and the last book he did was Joe Fixit. He also worked on Hulk's cousin, She-Hulk, in the first issue, number 12, and also worked on She-Hulk 22 to 38 of Hulk She-Hulk Volume 2, Cosmic Collision, and Hulk She-Hulk Sensational. Yes. So, aside from writing all those books, he started also writing some DC in this period of time. Writing, of course, Action Comics Weekly, writing the Green Lantern serial, co-doing with issue basically from 608 620. He also books like The Phantom, Justice. This was the New Universe book, 1532, Dreadstar, Creepy. This is outside Marvel, around late 90s. The Catamaric Drug War one-shot, Streets and Finches, another Dreadstar book. DC vs. Marvel, he did 2 and 4. Heroes Will Return. A Babylon 5 book, I'll get more out later. Powerpuff Girls, The Hunted, Red Sun vs. Talia Doom for Dynamite. Spike All Times, and Spike vs. Draco from IDW. The Haunted, Hulk Hunt, Dream Matters. Wonder Man, my favorite superhero from Marvel Comics. The Scream, Halo, Hal Jumper, Deadpool's Art of War, which the character for this book later popped up in Deadpool Wolverine. Yep, I hope it got checked for. He needed it. The Phantom, Danger in Forbidden City, story from Marvel Comics 1000, Elektra Black, White, Blood number 2, Battlestar Galactica vs. Battlestar Galactica, crosses between the 74 and 2004 series, and he did the Dreamwave TMNT Turtles book. Yep. And other books he did at DC, well, he did the Atlantic Chronicles. He worked on Aquaman, he did Atlantic Chronicles, Time and Tried, the first 46 issues along with the issues here, and the first 4 annuals for Aquaman. He did a little bit for Avengers. Avengers Last Story, which is a miniseries. A one-shot season 1 back basis with 6 issues. He also had a very successful run on Captain Marvel for, I kid you not, about 6 years. He did 2 straight volumes of this book. Yes, he did volumes 4 and 5 book. This is worth with Jen Bell as Captain Marvel. First one lasts for 35 issues. Second one lasts for 25. He actually came back to the book 18 years after he left the book with the Jen Bell Captain Marvel miniseries. He did a little bit for Fantastic Four. He never wrote the Action Man book. Never did. He did some miniseries. He did 4 Fantastic Four Reed Richards, 16 or 16 and 2 Fantastic Four. He did the Prodigal Thumb one-shots for Guardians of the Galaxy, Fantastic Four and Silver Surfer, and he did new Silver Surfer one-shot. Let's see. He did some Spy Boy book. Yeah, Spy Boy, if you're curious who published this book, Dark Horse Comics in the 1990s. Yeah, it was just a spy book. Apparently, he was hired to do it. So he did... the book lasted for 17 issues. He did almost all the issues but 1. He did a crossover Young Justice, which I'll get back to that. The Mandalorian Special. The Manchurian Candidate. The MAGA Affair. Apparently, there's also known as 13.3. They're debating he did a book. And Final Exam. He did some issues for Wolverine, 9, 11, 16, 24, 24, and 44. But Volume 2, he did 2 one-shots, Reign of Terror and Gold Liberty. There was the Blood Hunger one-shot, which is a reprint of a series he did for Markham Presents, issues 85, 92, and Wolverine First Class, 13, 21. So he also worked on... Okay, so he did do one Superbook. Yes, he never wrote Superman, Action Comics, Superman of Steel, like, of all the Superman titles. He only wrote only one, during the height of the 1980s. That being Supergirl. Yes, a book that was really good, and for some weird reason, DC has chosen not to finish collecting this book. For some weird reason, they just haven't done it yet. Yes, they just chose not to finish it. Excuse me. You see, when DC collected this book and run, and trade paperback, they did 4 volumes, which collected the first 43 issues, and they also did Mary Returns, which was published in 03, which was actually toward the end of the book. Was basically the last 6 issues of the book. As for why DC never finished collecting this book, I have no idea. It's one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. But, so, when it comes to his DC stuff, basically there's been 3 very popular comics in DC Comics over the years, one of whom got a chance to write a TV show based on this particular book, that being Young Justice. He wrote 5 episodes for the show. Young Justice did pretty much almost the entire series, except for issues 8 and 22. He did the Sins Youth miniseries, plus you'll get her own one-shot. By the way, his other 2 most popular books from DC being, besides Supergirl and Young Justice, the other being Aquaman. I say popular because his run was really good under his time. Oh my gosh, the book was amazing. I'll get to more story in a minute. So he did also do some X Factor. Yes, by the time in 1996, he did join the X books, but he only wrote just X Factor and Wolverine. And you're like, really? That's all he wrote during the 90s? Yeah. For X Factor, of course, first issue he did was issue 55 during the original X Factor run, featuring the original 5 as X Factor, and he did almost 20 straight issues for the book. For issue 70, well, actually, full time, he got a new book with issue 71. He did also annual 6 to 8. Now, the reason I heard of why he left this book was because he got tired of he was basically getting burnt out with all the crossovers this book, the X books have been doing this period of time. They did a lot. And he hated it. He absolutely hated doing the crossovers. It was also during this period of time that basically, according to what I read, and he confirmed this to me in person, that it was his idea to have Wolverine's bones removed from Wolverine's body via his pores by Magneto during the Fatal Attractions crossover. That was all his idea. He didn't write the issue. I think Scott Lobdell wrote the issue. This was X-Men Volume 2, number 25 when this happened. Yes. But before I talk about the rest of X Factor, there's one particular very important book that I should talk about. He did create in the 90s that is still very popular this very day. It's had a whole bunch of miniseries, had a couple more volumes since then. That being a character who was featured in 2 video games, 2 major video games, Shattered Dimensions, and at the time when Peter David himself wrote that game. He wrote the story, not the actual gameplay. That being Spider-Man 2099, a character who was also featured on Ultimate Spider-Man, the Across the Spider-Verse movies, which I'm hoping Peter David got checks for those too, because that's a character he created, and I'm really hoping he got paid for those. Because since it was Sony, Sony probably be more reasonable with Peter David than Marvel Studios would, because of her story from Jim Starlin where DC Studios paid more for the rights for royalty for KG Beast than Marvel paid for Thanos, Gamora, and Drax. Which I'm hoping Marvel should also out there with that one. Yes, so he did the first 44 issues, the annual, and Spider-Man 29 meets Spider-Man. Excuse me. Now, why did he leave the book after 44 issues? From what I read, he quit. I never talked about this in person, but he quit the book because the editor of the 29 line got fired from Marvel Comics. So all the writers from the 2099 line at the time, basically when this happened, all quit their books. So Marvel brought in a replacement writer to finish the book up with 2 more issues. Peter David would come back to the book in, I kid you not, 2013. And it lasted for a good few years. It lasted first for, actually about 2014. It lasted for 12 issues, had restarted because of Secret Wars, and then had a 25 successful issue run. That kind of wish Marvel would not end it, but they did. But prior to this book coming back, there was a very popular book released in 2005 that he worked on, which I think may have been like his only major book he worked on this period of time. Well, first there was his miniseries called Mandrix, which is a comic published under the Max imprint, which was later published as an ongoing series afterwards. Marvel decided to revive a book that I'm currently reviewing right now, X Factor. And Peter David, for a writer, had one of the longest runs on any title. As a matter of fact, while I was reading comics, this was by far the longest run I've ever seen. That was Dan Slott's Amazing Spider-Man run. This lasted from 2005 to 2013. This very popular X Factor run that it was shocking this book didn't hit the restart button. Everything else get restarted. Everything else was launched, no problem. But this book was able to continue with no issue. Yeah, in 2013, I was publishing 3 one-shots, Quick and the Dead, Lila Miller, and Nation X one-shots. And then a year after this book ended, Marvel launched another X Factor book, Peter David's writer, All New X Factor. That got canceled due to low sales. And some idiots decided to put out basically who point the blame at the cancellation title. For some weird reason, this book, the blame for the cancellation of this book or for the low sales was because of Gambit. And I'm like, really? You blame a popular fiction character like Gambit for the cancellation of the book? I highly doubt that was the reason why. Now, I did talk to a little bit Peter Day about this book. For what I did ask this, was he inspired by the original incarnation of X Factor? You know, one was a corp based. Kind of. He was. That's what he mentioned to me about this one. Young Justice was something he was hired to do. It was not all his idea. It was somebody else basically brought it to him. He did do one more X Factor story after he did All New X Factor ended. He did 2 issues of X-Men Legends, which filled some gaps for his X Factor book. But as a Spider-Man, aside from doing Spider-Man 29, he did Secret Wars 29. Here's the thing. After he did, there was one more ongoing series he did do with Marvel Comics. A book known as Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, which sadly ended up being his final ongoing he ever worked on. Yep, the last one. And like, wait a minute. Are you saying that book that came out, The Clone Conspiracy, that was his last ongoing he worked on? Yes. Health issues. I think his stroke happened long after that. So after that, he basically just did a mini-series. He did Symbiotic Spider-Man, Absolute Carnage Symbiotic Spider-Man, which was a one-shot, Symbiotic Spider-Man Alien Reality, Symbiotic Spider-Man King in Black, Symbiotic Spider-Man King Crossroads, Symbiotic Spider-Man 29, which sadly being his last book he did before he passed away, which I do own that. He, of course, also this period of time came up with 3 Mesmer books and Joe Fixit and New Fantastic Four, obviously. And that's kind of all his comic books he worked on. Yeah. But I should also talk about some of the novels he wrote. Yes, Peter David, aside from being a very popular comic book writer, also wrote novels. Oh yeah, he does write some Star Trek comics. He did. He wrote some issues of DC's time writing the original series, which I think has been collected in trade paperback. But I think IDW. Yes. And so for these books here, so he did write some novels. Okay, so the obvious question is, what is the very first Star Trek book he ever wrote? It was a Next Generation novel called Strike Zone, released in 1989. And he wrote several Next Generation novels. Rock and Hard Place, Vendetta, Q-in-Law, which, according to his widow, this is how these two met, believe it or not. Apparently she got her hands on this book, and later on she later met Peter David, and she later married him in 1998, and these two have a daughter together, who is part of the LGBT community, and of course they have grandchildren too. There's also Amazati, really good book he also did a sequel to. There's Q Squared, which this book involved Q versus the character Telos from the original series. It was out as a Q. There is a book of Double Helix, Double or Nothing. This actually was the finale for a 6-book storyline. Book 5 was the finale because book 6 was a flashback story. Yes, I kid you not. There was also IQ, a book he wrote with Q's actor John Delancey. He later did MSI Forever, and the last Star Trek book Next Generation book he worked on was Before Dishonor. He did work on 3 original series books. The Rift, Disheartened, and Captain's Daughter are released in 1991, 92, and 95. Next Generation books, the ones I talk about here, are released in 89 to 91, 93, 94, 2 books 99, 1 book in 2000, 103, 107, and he wrote a IDW book for a comic for Next Generation. He did 2 stories for Captain's Table. He wrote Once Burned, and we have Tales of Captain's Table. That's actually up on the bus. I was all around with this one. He wrote 2 books for Deep Space Nine. He wrote The Surge and Wrath Pathways. He wrote 2 books. The book's called Gateways, which he did with a bunch of writers. I actually met one of these writers. I think it was Keith R.A. Canardo, I think it was. I met him at Comic-Con. He was at the same booth. They had to collaborate with each other. There was also a book from Tales Mini War where basically he was collaborating with a bunch of different writers. Really cool guy in person. He did 3 novels for Starfleet Academy, Wars Force Venture, Lionfire, and Starfleet Academy. The Gate books released both 102. Deep Space Nine was 93 and 97. Captain Sable was 98 and 05. The Captain Steel Adventures released in 94. But his most popular book series. A book series, I have used some books for this one. Excuse me. A book series that he was the only writer for this book. He actually created the captain of the ship for this book, the Excalibur, for a comic book. Now, I did ask him this in person, because this is the series where the captain of the ship is Mackenzie Calhoun. And according to Peter David, he told me this, Mackenzie Calhoun is based upon Braveheart. Well, he's based on the Mel Gibson version of Braveheart. That's kind of what he's based on. Of course, this book featured Elizabeth Shelby, who was a guest star in 2 episodes of Next Generation. Who later came back for an episode of Picard Season 3. They also feature Dr. Shalar, who was mentioned in an episode of Next Generation. And if you're curious, this book series started back in 1997. Last book was released in physical book was 2011 with Blind Man's Bluff. The 3-part series returned. This book trilogy for this book, not really sure exactly why in the world this was like this. And I did ask him this when I met him last, because this 3-part book series was released digitally. Yeah, I don't know why. This is back in 2015. I did ask us. Not even he knows the reason why. He told me he had no idea why this release is just digitally only. Why there's no physical copy of this book. He had no idea about that. And the titles of these books are House of Cards, Into the Void, Two Front War, Endgame, which was actually collected. I listened to the audiobook for this one. It was really amazing. Which also featured Captain Picard, the Admiral Jellicoe, Captain Jellicoe became Admiral prior to having this book, and the idiot Admiral from Next Generation, Deep Space Nine. Yeah, it's featured in the first book. This one. We also had Martyr, Fire and High, a collection for Next Generation. This is why we was collecting the first 4 books. The Quiet Place, Dark Allies, which I believe this book was, they had the destruction of the original Excalibur, and then they brought a new one, the new Excalibur trilogy. There's also a graphic novel for Double Time. There's a 3-book Excalibur, Requiem, Restless Frustration, Being Human, Gods Above, Stones of Veil, After the Fall, Missing Action, Treason, Blind Man's Up, which I mentioned was the last physical book, and then we have 3-part return. Now, my dad has read these books. I've read most of these books already, and I did tell Peter Day about this. He was very happy to hear that my dad was a fan of the Star Trek novels. And okay, so he did also write, like I mentioned, he did also write some episodes of TV. He wrote 2 episodes of Babylon 5, Soulmates, and There the Honor Lies, which these are episodes from season 2. He did 1 episode of Benton Alien Force in Charm's Way, 3 episodes of Benton Ultimate Alien, Reflect the Glory, Prison Number 775 Missing, Solitary Assignments, and he did 5 episodes Young Justice, Secrets, Insecurity, Bloodline, Intervention. Now, he did tell me about the Blue Beetle episode. One of these was the Blue Beetle episode. I did ask him this one. Did he write that one before or after he had his stroke? He told me he wrote that before he had his stroke. Like, okay, cool. I'm glad, in fact, basically, that Greg Weisman brought in Peter Day, because after he wrote the original comic that the show was loosely based on. Why not? Well, I'm sure Peter David got paid for that too, obviously. But sadly put, for the last, I would say the last 5 years, he has had serious health issues over the years. Ranging from dialysis, I heard this from his wife on Patreon. Dialysis, he had problems with his organs, he's also problem with diabetes. There was at one point, according to Ralph Macchio, he had lost a ton of weight, and then the weight came back. I wanted to hopefully get a chance to meet him again after 2019, but that but didn't happen because of his health. I did read online about this, and this is definitely true. After he had his stroke, he started writing his comics basically with the Dragon program, which, according to my mom, that is something that doctors also use. Yes, doctors also use that program too. Basically, the Dragon program is simply basically wearing a headset and just talking to the computer and it types of stuff for you. That's kind of what the Dragon program is. And Peter David is the only known comic book writer that I've ever heard of who used a particular program. I've never heard anybody else use it. So did I ask him about certain people? Okay, so what do you think of the Supergirl TV show? He loved it. He absolutely loved the Supergirl TV show. I didn't ask him about Aquaman, but I'm sure he loved it, given the fact he got a chance to meet Jason Momoa. Yep. Trying to think what else here. Also, here's something interesting though. When I first met him, he did have facial hair when I first met him. He actually had a mustache. And then the second time I met him, he got rid of the mustache. He became clean shaven for some reason. I'm not sure why. I never asked him about that at all. Obviously, he didn't remember me from the last time I saw him. And both times I met him, it was at Tampa Bay Comic-Con. The last I saw him was Tampa Bay Comic-Con back in 2019. That was the time I officially saw him. Which, the guy was always awesome. And at the same booth that where he was at, Keith DeCarlo was there too. And you would not believe who also was there at that very same booth there where Peter David was. Melinda Snodgrass. Who is that, you might ask? Why? She is the one who helped create the Borg for Next Generation, and she wrote a few episodes for the Next Generation TV show. She wrote let's see. She wrote a few episodes. She did introduce, according to her, she introduced even Sarah Bear to the sci-fi genre. Actually, I think he introduced her to it. She's awesome. What she wrote: Measure a Man, Pen Pals, Opt a Long Letter, Instant Command, and High Ground. She did ask me if I saw the director's cut of the story. I did not see it because there were additional scenes released for that one, but I didn't get a chance to read it. But she was also the same booth too. And she did tell me this. Of course, I was talking about her instead of talking about Peter David. Well, she was the same booth. She told me she loved working with Michael Dorn and Jonathan Frakes. She never got a chance to meet John and Lane scene until working on Play together. Yep. But in the case of Peter David, awesome guy. If anybody ever got a chance to meet him, you should have. I know that my friend Tivia has met him once, as far as I can recall. Oh yeah, there's also Fallen Angel. I almost forgot to mention that too. He worked on that with a follow-up to Supergirl. My friend Tivia has met him once at Comic-Con. Mike Ventura from Comic Frontline, he's met him several times at New York Comic Con. He's actually interviewed him twice. He's definitely a comic writer people are going to miss because the man left Lost Impact, and he is about the same age as my dad. My dad does not go with the same health issue he does. He did, but I hope basically people will get a chance to respond to what I say about Peter David. Overall, he was a very nice guy to me in person. Like I mentioned a couple times about that. Sorry. But that's to discuss here. Next up, back to Jiraiya. Okay? Next video. Bye.